I got a question. Why would a team, and maybe James Ham
Let's
can
bring James
can
in. Yeah.
help answer. Why would any team pay one of these guys early if they're under the restricted free agent area? Like why not just let the market dictate what you'll be doing? If you want a top flight deal, I guess maybe you would do it if you're going to pay him more than or excuse me, less than the max. But if
And
they're
there were some
asking,
of those.
yeah, so you would do that because maybe you're even getting a deal. But if he was asking for the max and you weren't sure about it, all right, we'll see what happens. You're a restricted free agent. We'll decide whether or not we want to match it or if somebody even offers you that.
Well, one of the problems is if you go into your final year of your contract, then yeah, at the end you're a restricted free agent as long as they place a qualifying offer on you, right? And the qualifying offer for Kaminga is going to be huge because he's a like what was it, number 6 pick in the draft. So his qualifying offer is going to be pretty substantial, but you can give him that. You have to give him the qualifying offer, right? In order to retain his restricted free agent status. Well, he has two choices. He can go out and shop and try to find a better deal. He can try to find a long-term deal with someone else, and then it goes back to the club, and they have to determine whether or not they'll match that deal. So we've seen this, right? It's the offer sheet from a different team. But what a player can also do is he can go, all right, I'll accept the qualifying offer. And now, as a team, you're done because the qualifying offer means that he plays out this 5th year and then he's an unrestricted free agent and can go anywhere he wants.
Mm.
And you don't have any rights to him. And not only that, if I'm not mistaken, because in this situation, his Larry Bird rights would be at risk. In order to trade him, you have to get his approval in order to trade him in that final year. So it becomes really complex. And what you do is basically you get a player for cheap for 1 year, but then you throw away all goodwill. And, I think we're all watching this play out with the 49ers, right? Where Brandon Ayuk has been ruled out for the year. He's torn ACL, torn MCL, like catastrophic knee injury. And we all sat here like, just sign the contract, man. Just sign the contract. We just kept saying it. Uh, and this is why he held out. He held out because of a situation like this where he he wouldn't have guaranteed money. He wouldn't have control of his own destiny moving forward if he didn't play hardball. Now, I don't think like the NBA is slightly different in the way this all works out. But still, like having a 5-year deal or a 4-year deal is a lot more reassuring for a young guy than not knowing, and again, you better be sure that you're going to get paid by somebody else. And there's no way to guarantee you're going to get paid by someone else, especially like if you're a player like Kaminga, where you're kind of on the bubble as far as how much someone's going to pay you. Um, again, like Jalen Green was going to get 30 plus million from somebody, whether it was the Rockets or someone else, and the Rockets chose to do the deal.
Sidebar: Brandon Ayuk situation a little different because according to multiple sources and even himself to a certain degree, he was just sitting on the deal. Like
Yeah, that's where it's
he
different with the NFL versus the NBA, because the NBA is very specific. You have very specific time windows where you have to sign a contract.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Any of the deals today surprise you?
No. Well,
I
I
don't
mean,
think there's anything surprising out there. I'm a little surprised that Kaminga didn't reach an extension with him at all. But
yeah, I'm a
So
little surprised that Moses Moody did a 3-year, $39 million deal, because if I'm him, like I'm over the moon frustrated with the Golden State Warriors and wouldn't want to play for them for 3 years after this year. It feels like Moody's a much better player than the Warriors allow him to be. And every time he plays the Kings, he looks spectacular. And then he plays 14 minutes, and you're like, what in the world is happening here? I think the one other one is like Jalen Suggs. That's a lot of money, 150 mil for Jalen Suggs over 5 years. I don't know that you're going to really get true value out of an okay offensive player, a great defender, but there's a big difference between a great defender making 15, 20 million a year and a great defender making 30 million. You have to be a lot more than just a defender at 30 million.
Big time money for Jalen Johnson, also.
Yeah.
Atlanta Hawks is
Yeah.
Ooh, I missed that one.
150. Well, it just happened. Just under the deadline. I'm assuming as it's getting reported right now.
Wow, full
And this is
150.
yeah, and this is what we, because obviously it's our checkbooks. This is what we're looking at next year with Keegan. No,
Yeah.
this is it, right?
I mean, it sure does look like seeing all these deals right now, you
Mm-hmm.
might as well just pencil them in for close to a max money deal.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Like between 120 and 150 for 5 years. I mean, I don't see any way around it. Yeah.
You've avoided, like you have made it clear, you're not trading him for the last 3 years or heading into his third year.
Mhm.
There's no question that he's not the guy for you.
Yeah, I agree 100%. The other alternative would be like what's going on with Kuminga, and
That is not a good alternative.
no, like you don't want to go down that road. So if you plan on keeping him, there's no need to mess around. Don't waste any time. Sign him to the deal. Um, the way we joke about it, with the cap going up and all this other stuff, it's still something that if you need to down the road, you can probably move them if you need to, but that's just the going rate.
Mhm.
Jalen Johnson and Jalen Suggs getting those type of deals. Keegan Murray is locked in to that type of max extension.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people are confused, like here in the chat. Sakirna Bagley, the max money for a young player is different than max money for like the next contract. So he's not, these guys aren't eligible for 220. And if someone was eligible for 220, like a Luka, got huge, like the max money, it's because he's met all the criteria for all NBA multiple years in a row and all that stuff. So that's the only way to get max money. De'Aaron Fox signed a 5-year, $164 million deal. That's what he got, and that was max money for his. It's a max rookie extension, and now he could have got more if he was like um, a multi-time All NBA player at that point.
The number behind the word max changes every year, doesn't it?
Well, it changes, but not by. I mean, it's all based off a percentage of the salary.
Yeah, it's not like it goes from 130 to 150. Like there's just small incremental changes in what the term max, what the term max represents.
Yeah, I think it's probably based off of either 25 or 30% of the salary cap, and then they get 8% raises if you sign with your own team. That's the biggest difference between signing with your own team and signing elsewhere. Because everybody has like a basic maximum that they can give somebody for their years of service. So there's always going to be a maximum. But then if you sign with your own team, I believe you can be under contract for 1 additional year, and on top of that, you get 8% raises versus 5% raises. And that 3% doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot when we're talking contracts in the hundreds of millions.
Can I ask a King's question?
That'd be a great idea.
You talk about the LeBron Jordan situation. Waiting for days, let that pop up on the show. Well, no, because we're talking Game 7s. Game 5 hadn't even happened
Look,
yet.
Jesse brought it up again. Like I don't even
Game 5 hadn't even happened on Friday. So how was I talking to it at that point?
Man, brought it up out of nowhere for the second time.
But this I have been waiting to talk about since Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's not like the biggest deal. Boogie Ellis gets cut on Thursday. and I liked what he brought to the table. I thought he was a guy that had an offensive bag, potential creator. Could be, nothing in this league. Could be a overseas G League guy or whatever. But now I'm looking at kind of like Monty McNair, and it's like, well, why doesn't he ever like these guys? Why doesn't he ever like these guys that in college or something can get their own shot? It feels like he wants guys that move, that go station to station, catch and shoot or whatever. And I look down the list and I look at Hardy in Dallas. You had him as a second rounder. Just moved on
Just
from him
signed
for
an
no,
extension, by the way.
yeah, just
Yeah.
just moved on from him for no reason. You look at a guy like Boogie Ellis. People were upset about a lot of things on Thursday night. I'm not gonna say I was upset, but I looked at it and I was like, wish this was different. As the Kings couldn't throw the ball into the Pacific Ocean in LA. In Phoenix, Dalton Connect's just going crazy.
Mm.
And he was a bucket getter, a guy that can get by, and you need scoring, but you decided to go with another guy that I believe is ultimately going to be a station to station guy in Devin Carter. Tell me I'm off a little bit here, James, and give me some examples of Monty taking a chance on a guy in the mold of Boogie Ellis because I can't really find him.
Yeah, I mean, they have had guys in the last couple of years at the G League level, but like, look, if you're drafting in the top 5, the top, 8, then you're drafting for talent. Once you get past that, I think you're drafting a little bit for need and maybe a little bit for your system. It's not just but like purely talent based. Um, so I don't know. Like I get what you're saying, and I understand. There are these guys out there that are just scorers, but we're also talking about either second round picks or we're talking about undrafted players. And when you're dealing with those players, you're looking at a very, very like thin path to the NBA. Like in order for one of these guys to make it to the NBA, everything in the world has to go right. And somehow Keon Ellis has made it, right? And you want to duplicate that and you want to find new types of players to bring in and do this with. But I think it really does come down to the G League. It's easier to create role players at the G League level than to try to find some, crazy scorer that you might be able to develop at some point. Like even the Kings had Jemias Ramsey, right? That's the only under 20 player that I think the Kings have ever drafted under the Monty McNair era. Everyone else is, 21, 22, 23. And he's kind of a flyer because he was just like a scorer and super athlete. You don't see them take flyers on guys like that, and I think it's because they understand what the path is to playing in the league, and in order to develop guys, you want a 3 and D wing, you want a 3 and D, 4-5. You want somebody who's gonna come in and just play out of their mind at the 4. Like, again, go back to the Houston Rockets and look at the types of players that they were able to bring through their system and develop, and make them into NBA players. It was Montrezl Harrell and Tariq Black and House, Daniel House, these types of very specific types of role players. And I think those guys have a better opportunity to make it out of the G League and into the parent club as opposed to trying to find a scorer because everyone in the NBA can score. You got to be able to do the other stuff if you're going to make it.
Understandable, but then we go like, man, we don't have nobody that can create. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? The league goes down, and I'm not saying Boogie Ellis would have filled in and done great, but maybe Hardy would have. You had Hardy right there, and you gave him away for nothing, and that's a creator. Like I think they are missing, not maybe not now because you got DeMar DeRozan, but in the past they've been missing guys that can create their own shot. They're just station to station guys, and it's for basically for free. You had an opportunity to take a flyer on some of these guys, and you haven't. And I just don't know if it's it. Obviously he's got a plan, but it's like maybe take a flyer on one of them, see what happens.
Yeah. Hardy is a very specific case, and I'm not going to get into specifics, but there was a reason why a lot of teams passed on him in the draft. The fact that the Kings took him, they didn't take him realistically. That they had traded the pick, and the other team selected him. Dallas had selected him there, and the Kings weren't going to select him, from what I know. But I think a better example is probably last year, where the Kings had multiple second round picks, and as opposed to drafting Trace Jackson Davis, who had tumbled. And of course, there's this whole, word out there on the street that he only wants to play for a guaranteed contract, and that's number one. Number two, um, he really wanted at a certain point to go to the Golden State Warriors. The Kings could have selected him. He would have signed with Sacramento. They had an ability to give him a full roster spot, and they didn't. And instead, they drafted Jalen Slauson, who, after 1 year in their program, he was just cut by Orlando, I believe, and he's out of their program. So I think that there is a lot of time there's too much gambling in these situations on just, trying to find a diamond in the rough. But again, look at Isaac Jones and Isaiah Crawford. Like, one of those guys could make it to the NBA, and I think both of them will actually suit up and play in an NBA game this year as a two-way player. And those are both undrafted players. And again, their specific path to the league is as 3-and-D players, is as aggressive defenders. And I don't think you're going to get that out of like the scorer types. You can't convert those guys, is basically what I'm saying. You can't take a guy. I always make this comparison with Dante Green. You can't say, well, we're going to draft Dante Green, or we're going to trade for Dante Green, thinking that he's going to be a high level scorer at the NBA level. And if he's not, well, we'll just convert him into a 3-and-D guy. That never works, ever.
I'm not sold on how Mike and Monty even feel about those guys, because I still question how they feel about Keon. Like Keon, I mean, Keon's not far off the type of player we were talking about, at least, the humble beginnings part. And I'm still not sold that either one of them believe that he is the definitive answer to their two guard questions, or the definitive answer to the guy being, him being one of the guys that helps take this team to the next level. Maybe that's just me reading too much into words and body language and semantics and things like that. But like, I just don't feel like they're sold.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. They went out and drafted Devin Carter, and Devin Carter he's not here to replace De'Aaron Fox. That's not what the plan is. I mean, he was brought in as a lottery pick to potentially be a starting shooting guard at some point for this team, even if he is undersized. That's the plan. So, so maybe you're right there, but I also think you can't have enough of these, 3-and-D type guys, these athletic guys that play on the perimeter. You do need to keep bringing them in, and I think worst case scenario, Devin Carter is going to be a much better version of Colby Jones and be more of a jack of all trades guy, but still a guy who plays defense, a guy who at the college level was an incredible rebounder, but again, a long athletic defender. And I think that that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to build around the stars that they have, and the best way to do that is try to add these guys who do the dirty work. And I think you can create those guys, but I think when it comes to Keon Ellis, you're probably right. We haven't seen a definitive like Keon Ellis is starting game one. And I even if he is starting game one, we don't have anything definitive that he'll be a starter by game 6. And part
in
of that,
Mike and Monty's defense, I don't know that Keon did anything to stamp the fact he should be the starting two guard game 1 or game 6.
yeah, but I think he did enough last year to do that, like during down the stretch of the season. And if we're gonna look at preseason numbers and start making claims about people,
Well, but
he's
to be
pretty far down the list.
and sure, that's perfectly fine. But we also have to be honest that the team stunk at the tip. That's why the team was in the position that they were. Like,
Yeah.
did he step in and play well? Sure, he didn't make up for anybody being gone, and that's an unfair position to ask him to be in. By the way, is hey, our entire 2-guard depth was just wiped out. We need you to be all things right now. But at the same time, it's like if we're evaluating this, maybe that is in fact how Mike Brown and Monty McNair are evaluating this. Is like, yeah, he came in, he did some good things for us, but ultimately it didn't result in us winning enough games to get where we wanted to go.
Well, that, and I think we always have to be reminded too that the year before you had a shooting guard that played almost every game and helped you win 48 wins. 48 games. And that's a guy who played 30 minutes a night and was your third leading scorer, and that's Kevin Herter. And so I don't think you ever want to just close the door on Kevin Herter. And I think most of what we deal with Keon Ellis is, like the three of us pontificating on whether we what we would do if we were Mike Brown, what we would do if we were Monty McNair. That's a big difference between what they're going to do. And, again, we're predicting or projecting or whatever we're doing. It's we see something in Keon and what we think how he can help the team. But they may not see it fully the same way. And that's what you always have to kind of be prepared to deal with, is that our opinion is just that. And their opinion is they get paid for it, to not be on the radio, but to actually, do this job professionally as head coach and as general manager, and they do have their own idea of what it is that they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, they see a lot more than what we see on a daily basis, and understand the team dynamics a lot more than we do. Another thing that I took away after watching that game on Thursday, which was atrocious, by the way. I mean, that Clippers game was awful. And it fit the mold of the entire preseason. The
Sure
preseason
did.
was just dreadful. But what I took away from it was I don't really care. Don't really care. I don't think it has any bearing on what we're going to see on Thursday and moving forward. Really don't. The only way it would have mattered is if somebody would have gotten hurt. That's that would have been the carryover for the regular season. I was looking at some numbers last night, and I think it's interesting to see. I had it written down, but I didn't put it in my backpack. But the the best team, the Kings shot 25% or whatever from beyond the arc. Like just awful. Just it was just awful. The worst team, three-point shooting team in the league last year was the Portland Trail Blazers at 34%. Like the Kings aren't even as bad as they were from beyond the arc this preseason. They're not shooting 25% in the regular season. Like,
No.
let's just say they'll be the worst in the league. They'll shoot 35%. I don't even think they'll shoot that. I think they'll be more along the lines of 40 some odd percent, but whatever, argument's sake. And then I thought about I was like, okay, well, let me see what the best team shot in the preseason this past season. It was the Warriors who were cooking. Like I watched some Warriors games, they was hitting threes. They shot as a team in the preseason 38% from beyond the arc.
Mm.
Like even the best team, for whatever reason, I think some of it has to do with some of these G League guys and stuff like that, aren't shooting well from beyond the arc in a NBA season sense. So I know, the people talking about, even being focused, you're not trying to miss shots in the preseason, which is true, but you're also not 100% locked into what you're doing either. And I think that does matter with shooting. Like if you're just there's a difference between being locked in to what you're doing on every shot and then like kind of trying some things out or getting the shot up because you're supposed to take it. There's a different level of focus. So I look at something like that, and that was really the 3-point shooting was really the only thing that was like that really stuck out as an issue in the preseason to me. I think they'll rectify that, and I think the Kings will be fine start coming Thursday.
Well, offensively, that was the only problem. But the problem is that, again, the team that led the preseason in 3-point shooting led because they played the Kings twice. Like straight up. When you shoot 28 of 50 or 52, whatever it was, against one team, it's really hard in a 5-game stretch to bring that percentage down below 38%. Like after that, you would have had to be Sabrina Ionescu from last night, who was what, one of 19 or whatever it was. Yeah, I mean, there's really I one of 14 from three. There's really no way to bring your 3-point percentage down when you have that big blow up game. Now, the Kings were the worst in preseason by a long shot. Like it wasn't even close. But I'd also point this out. Like we asked De'Aaron Fox about like sort of the concern about all this on Friday, and he's like, I don't know why everyone's really freaking out. He's like, you do understand that like game one we were up at half, and game two we were up at half, like, and then the starters didn't play. He's like, so like realistically, if you want to judge us on what happened after that, that okay. He's like, but they think they're ready. And so I get that. I don't think that they played particularly well against Utah and they lost, but I also wouldn't have just flambéed them if it wasn't for the fact that they were already like 0-3 in the preseason before that. That was just like kind of a dirty game and kind of got mucked up on both sides. And Kings were in it all the way down the stretch and didn't close out a game. That wasn't that big of a deal. It's so maybe we are thinking too much about, the first two or three losses and not really like factoring in the fact that starters only played a certain amount of time and your bench wasn't your normal bench. Your bench was a bunch of guys who many of which have already been cut.
That's a great lead in. That's a great lead into the next part of this conversation that I want to talk to you about. James Ham of the Insiders helping us get ready for the Sacramento Kings schedule that tips off, of course, Thursday at the Golden One Center. We'll come back. We'll talk more with our insiders from the Insider. I'm going to try that again. 3, 2, 1. We'll talk more with our insider from the Insiders. James Ham with D'Lo and Casey return here on Sacramento Sports Leader, ESPN 1320.
Somebody, I think it was Greg Tabers, asked when we'll find out um, about starters and inactives and actives. That will not happen until 6:30 on opening night. They do not have to release any of those things until they release their starting lineups. And that happens 30 minutes before the 30 minutes before tip off.
I can't wait for basketball season, all basketball season, high school, college, all of it.
Low-key trickster, we don't have an idea if Kevin's going to play. We'll probably know more tomorrow. My guess, well, I don't even really want to do that at this point. I thought he would play as of last week when he was cleared, but the way they're kind of acting and the way they brought in Doug McDermott, my guess is that he might not be ready for the opener. And that might be that he hasn't had like final approval from his doctor or something. I don't know what the final is with him, but it does seem like we don't have anything definitive yet.
I heard you talk about that on Friday, and I know what you're saying and what you're talking about, but it's almost like you're either cleared or you're not. Like you're either cleared or you're not.
No, I get that, but the point I made on Friday too was there's a difference between clearing Jordan McLaughlin, who had an ankle sprain and has worked his way back over the course of like 3 weeks, and somebody who's been out for 7 months.
Right. No, I understand the ramp up aspect,
Yeah.
like get them going, but it's all right. You're cleared for full contact. All right. Well, we don't want to give you full contact yet. We'll start you here with one on one. Like, well, then you're not cleared.
No.
You know what I mean? Like that. That's just the wording of how the medical staff does it sometimes. Not just the Kings, just in general.
The
Always
Kings,
crack
yeah,
me up.
and all the teams have their own return to play policies.
Mm.
Yeah, they do. They have the return to play. So once, for the Kings, it's very specific. You go 1-on-1, you go 2v2, you go 3v3, you go 5v5, and they build you up. And you got Russ Dog, you asked if we had an update on Lyles. Trey was at practice on Friday and started playing 1-on-1 against Jawad Williams, who's an assistant. And that was the first that Mike Brown had seen that. Because Mike said, we haven't seen that so far. So that must be a good sign. And then what you do is at each of these steps, it's not just going through the motions. You have them play against each other. You have like a 1-on-1 or a 2v2 setting. And the reason why you're doing 1v1, 2v2, and then you're expanding is because when you're playing a 1-on-1, you're not playing full court. And when you're playing 2-on-2 and 3-on-3, you're typically not playing full court. When you start to get to 4s and 5s, that's when they start to extend out. And what you have to do is at every step, you need to see how the dude looks and feels the next morning. And so somebody will, again, they'll just play 1-on-1 and it's like, okay, let's assess how sore is your groin after doing the 1-on-1 session. And then as you build them up, every step of the way, you're expanding the court, expanding the game more and more. And that's when you start to, if a guy is trying to break off of a cut or something to, cut back door, and then all of a sudden he's like, oh, nope, I can't do that yet. That's not good. Or you could get him all the way built up to 5-on-5, and then he could realize, like, running up and down the court, that he can't stop. Because that's, when you're in a tight area, that's one thing. But when you're flying down the court and all of a sudden you go to stop
We're
and
coming
your
back.
body starts, okay.
Well, I saw that question come up on the chat. Do you want to pick that up? Because I think everyone would have an interest in that, is an update on Trey Lyles. Now, I know that for those that don't know, the team didn't practice today. We don't think that they practiced yesterday, and if they did, there was no media availability, correct?
Well, yesterday was
Fan
Fan
Fest.
Fest.
Yeah.
So no, they typically on Fan Fest, they might come out and do like a 30-minute or walkthrough or whatever, or they'll do they can do like a warm up before, and then they go hit Fan Fest, and then they sign autographs and do whatever it is they do for Fan Fest. There was allegedly a media availability yesterday, but none of the media was there because most people were at the 49ers
49ers
game.
Chiefs. Yeah.
Yeah. So and to be honest with you, I haven't gone to Fan Fest in a long time. It really is for the fans. Like there's not typically media availability on those things and all my years covering the team. So when I heard that there was like a small media availability, if anyone was there yesterday, I was surprised by that. So yeah. So they didn't practice on Saturday either. They had a day off on Saturday and then Fan Fest on Sunday. And then today they did not practice. They either had a film study or they had, they have NBA requirements that they have to do. Like they'll have to go watch points of emphasis and all that stuff. So it could be one of those days. But we were told they were going to have a light shooting day one of these days, so they would not have practice. So tomorrow and Wednesday they'll practice. Thursday is opening night. We'll have 11 o'clock media availability for shoot around, following shoot
That's a
around.
good question from Sakir and Bagley. Does anyone know if Devin had to sing or dance?
Well,
Because I can't picture it.
Look, somebody got to let us. So I listened to you guys all the way down there, right? And I saw the video, and it was.
Yeah, right.
All right.
Oh, Jesse over
That's
there
what you're
stalling
doing?
him out.
All right. Well, you asked, was he going to dance at Fan Fest? And it reminded me, you know what happened last Fan Fest? I don't know what happened this year, but you know what happened last Fan Fest? Sasha refused to dance.
Well, that's why Sasha's
That's
not
what I'm
here
saying. He
anymore.
ain't around here.
Oh,
Why Sasha's not here anymore.
Sasha literally was like, no, I'm not doing it. Crowd, come on. Little Timmy in the front row. Come on, Sasha. No, I'm not doing it.
it's also possible Sasha was 35. I mean, just be honest.
Yeah, get over here, Rook, and dance. What you talking about?
Hold on. Only thing I searched Devin Carter on Twitter just to see what popped up, and so I could be wrong. I could be. This can't be right. Somebody who was there help me with this. He's doing the opening remarks. He's welcoming everyone to the stadium, to the Golden One Center. I could be wrong. I think he's reading notes off his phone.
Wow.
Oh, no, yeah, he's definitely reading.
Is he reading notes?
Yeah, he's reading. He's definitely reading. Well, it's first Fan Fest. Wants to make sure he gets it right.
Yes, welcome. Did he not know the name of the Golden One Center? Like, what information did he need to know that was on his notes app? James, I demand that tomorrow at 12:15, you walk up to Devin Carter and say, were you reading from a notes app at FanFest? The people deserve to know. Boy, I sound like I hate Devin Carter the last 2 days. My goodness. Devin Carter hate train over here.
Here's the problem. Devin Carter doesn't have to talk to us because he's injured.
That's right.
And he doesn't have to talk to us until January, I think. Like, we can make a request, but realistically, he doesn't have to talk to us.
Hey, Shannon, was Devin reading from notes?
I mean, like you said, I'm trying to figure out what maybe it is the arena.
Maybe he forgot that. Maybe he doesn't know the name of the Golden One Center. Maybe he just had to remember to say welcome.
Or if he forgot it. I mean, he shouldn't. I was about to use an example. He shouldn't have forgot it, but maybe he did. Like, what's the name of the Phoenix Suns arena?
The Footprint Arena?
I don't think it's that no more.
Phoenix Suns
Arena? I think it might be Phoenix Suns Arena.
Oh, nailed it.
But the point is,
Talking Stick is old, right? Wasn't Talking Stick before?
Yeah. But the point is, I'm asking you to do that, and this is where it's not the same comparison. I'm asking you to do this on the fly. You weren't drafted to Phoenix 4 months ago and should know the name of the arena.
You practice at the Golden One Center. All right, I'm gonna leave him alone because it's been a little harsh on Devin Carter the last couple of days. The question was, James, and I know he was out on the court the last practice you were at. Trey Lyles, do we know anything about Trey?
No, we were kind of going through this over during the break. So the Kings have a very strict return to practice regiment, and some players go right through the return to practice thing. And it depends on how long a player's out. So when Trey comes back, he will have been gone I think it's almost 6 weeks. So that's a long time to sit. So what they did is on Friday, he was playing one-on-one against Jawad Williams, one of the assistant coaches. And then once you play one-on-one, they have you come in the next day. They're like, okay, how are we feeling? Like, are you sore? Is there soreness in the area where you're injured? How do we feel? And then what they do is, we always talk about this return to play, and we talk about the 1-on-1, 2v2, 3v3, 5v5. They keep expanding the court, right? And so players, again, when you're playing 2-on-2, it's just a bigger game than when you're playing a 1-on-1, and there's moving and cutting. When you're playing 3-on-3, again, now we're using the whole half court. When you get to 5-on-5, that's when they start running you up and down the court. And again, it's about how do you feel the next day? Or do you feel something right now in your groin, and can you not play anymore right now? And sometimes that's the issue. It's like, oh no, I'm still sore. And then sometimes it's like, hey, I have some swelling the next day. And then sometimes it's like, no, I feel great. And so if you clear one step, then you go on to the next. And they're always sort of, again, expanding the court. And especially with the groin pull, they're going to want to make sure he can run up and down a court, 5-on-5 full court for at least 1 or 2 practices, because that's the biggest thing with this type of injury is his ability to stop and start. And, taking off and dunking a basketball might be an issue. He might not have his pop, but realistically, you're worried about whether he can put on the brakes without just running into the front row, because that's part of the issue with a groin pull.
Because I know you said sometimes they just don't even go through the process in certain situations, but in your opinion, because we haven't even really heard anything, about Trey Lyles, the possibility of him playing opening night seems kind of slim.
Oh yeah, no way, no way. I don't think there's any way because Friday was supposed to be. That's 3 weeks where we might get a an update, and we didn't. So like sometime during this week, you would think that there would be an update. And so far we haven't seen that. So I believe it was 3 weeks on Friday. I might be wrong about that. I don't think it's this coming week. It was a couple of days before training camp started. Yeah. So look, if he misses the first week of the season, I wouldn't be surprised. It might be a little bit longer than that. Just because his return to play. So say a player gets sick and misses 3 games, they're not doing return to play for that. They're not doing the 5-on-5, and they might want them to participate in practice first if there is a practice. But if not, that's like too short of a window for them to get out of shape or anything. But you can fall out of basketball shape really, really quickly at the NBA level. So that's why we usually, if a player misses 10 days, 15 days, that's when you start seeing like at least an abbreviated return to play. But with a longer injury like this with Trey, it's going to be, it'll probably be a week of buildup to get him, maybe a little bit longer. And to be honest, we saw the same exact thing last year. And he missed the first 13 games of the season where, but he got hurt right at the end. He pulled a calf muscle, I think, right before either the final preseason game or right before the opener. So yeah, it's just a bummer that he keeps having these injuries like leading into camp or coming out of camp.
Just a couple of heads up things not related to the Sacramento Kings, but as we mentioned earlier, Kyle Shanahan is speaking to the media now. He does confirm that Brandon Ayuk has a torn ACL in his right knee. He will need surgery. He is out for the season. He also said Deebo Samuel is dealing with a form of pneumonia. He was struggling to breathe yesterday, which was why he didn't play long. He had some fluid in his lungs, and he's in the hospital. That's not past tense. He is in the hospital right now, and there's no timeline right now for Deebo Samuel's return. So those are a couple of updates from Kyle Shanahan again, who is speaking to the media right now. Sorry to interrupt the Kings conversation, but run George Kittle, Chris Conley day to day. Well, that's good news. At least there's no, he's out for the year too.
Day to day is about.
Okay, all right. All right, day to day. Good news, guys. Good news, guys. Man, what a tough 7 weeks it's been for the San Francisco 49ers. My goodness.
Yeah, brutal.
And man, this is honestly, it's moments like this. And I know the Kings went through it at the end of last year, but that's the thing. And I don't think the 49ers season is derailed at all. But these are the types of things that you just need so much to go right for you. And while I thought the argument as to why the Kings were good was dumb, but a lot did go right that first year with Mike Brown. It didn't quite go right at the end of last year. And you see all of this happening in San Francisco and you go, man, I hope this doesn't happen to Sacramento. I hope this doesn't happen to the Kings. You need these guys. And they're already kind of behind the 8 ball because you just kind of laid out a potential timeline for return for Trey Lyles. We don't know what's going on with Kevin Huerter yet.
Yeah. No,
and those are key pieces. Like you were talking before the break, Hammer, about rotation, the preseason and the rotation guys with guys that have been cut. So many important components to the Kings second unit haven't played a second yet.
No, that's true. And I mean, look, that's why they brought in Doug McDermott last week. Like you can tell they're feeling it right now. They're like, okay, well, we're not at full strength and we don't know when we're going to be at full strength. So we probably need to bring someone in who doesn't shy away from coming in here and just throwing up the ball every single time he touches it. It's okay to have players like that, especially veteran players that know how to play in your system, that can read and react super quick. Like I don't blame them for bringing in McDermott, especially if you think, Kevin Huerter might be out for a little while, or, heck, you can probably even go push Kevin over and have him play a little bit have him and McDermott play some 3 and 4 for stretches until you get healthy at that 4 position. So, like, you need veterans on this team. You need guys who understand the game. And what you can't do is you can't get like the first 8 games of the season, you're playing a couple of two-way players major minutes because that's what you got. And that's not fair to them. And it's not fair to Mike Brown. So again, I think the move to go get McDermott was a lot because of, whether or not Kevin will be ready for the opener or whether or not Trey will be open the first week or first 2 weeks of the season. You're definitely trying to make sure that you at least have some sort of scoring punch outside of Malik Monk off the bench. And if you can't guarantee that you're going to have that, then you better go manufacture. Better go find it. And so that's what I think we saw McDermott.
Yeah, it's so when I was like doing research and trying to break some things down about like what it really looked like with the Kings preseason, um, come to find out, Kobe Jones, Mason Jones, um, Boogie Ellis, uh, those guys, they took a lot of shots in the preseason. And I'm not saying they like were awful and missed a whole bunch, but that contributed to some of these percentages that we saw. And to James's point, yeah, you don't want to go into the season where they got to take as many shots or anything close to what they took in the preseason. Obviously, you'll have your starters and your big time players playing more minutes, but in those times when they don't, you probably still want to have a guy like Doug McDermott there, because like those guys took as many shots than a lot of the big guys that we talked about. Like I think Boogie Ellis was at like 24 shots. Fox took like 27, I think, or something like that. Like they took a lot of shots.
Get him up, kid.
They took a lot of shots, and you don't want to go into the real basketball with that type of situation.
Yeah, I mean, look, if Mike Brown has to play his starters 38, 39 minutes a game the first week of the season, he will. Like, it's about winning. Once it comes down to opening night, like, it's game on. Like, every game counts. You saw what happened last year. If you trick off a couple of games, like, every game counts. So he's going to have to do whatever he has to do while some of these guys are getting healthy in order to put this thing together, to make sure that they're sort of melting in the pot together, that they're figuring out how to work together. And it's not just a simple cut and dry, like, hey, uh, you know, everyone's here and healthy and ready. That's just not the case. So you gotta mix and match the way you have to. And I think having a veteran like Doug, just like at the last second, if you need him to play 18 minutes in a game, he's got it in his bag, and he's not going to be shy, and he's not going to hesitate. He might not be great defensively. He might not like lead your team in rebounding, but he knows how to play the game at a high level. And I think there are a couple other guys still out there that you could probably, if you think that some of these injuries are going to be long term, you might start digging in a little bit deeper and figuring out if a Jay Crowder is ready to play, figuring out if like a Nasir Little who got waived this week or Lonnie Walker who got waived this week, if those guys are interested in coming in again and have another tryout or playing a little bit. You just have to figure out like on the fly if you're Mike Brown.
That's the name that kept popping up last week. Was to
Jay Crowder.
Yep. Even remotely realistic in your opinion?
I don't know. I mean, even
I
like
don't know if Jay is looking at a place like Sacramento, he might be hoping for like a Milwaukee or a team like that. But
I mean, why not? If you can look at a spot where you might be able to play, even if it's short term, let's say you come in and you play for, like a month and then they don't need you anymore and they cut you. At least you know that you played during that month because they're going to need the bodies and you're going to get some actual PT. So when you go on to the next spot, you'll be in game shape and ready to roll. Like I think there is like sort of, an advantage to that. I also think it's interesting the Kings went with more of an offensive player than a defensive player when it came to that. But, that's kind of the dynamic that we've seen here.
Always what they do. They talk about defense, then they go find guys who can do stuff for them offensively.
Yeah. I like McDermott though. Like again, if he wants to fit in and And also I think we learned McDermott's contract is a league minimum deal, so it's like 3.2 or 3.3 million bucks. Of that, the Kings are going to pay 2.1 million of that, or 2.1 will count against our cap. But also 750,000 is guaranteed. So he didn't even get a full guaranteed deal. So that means like for him that probably gets him till mid-December, where he would, if he's hit mid-December, he's probably made about 750,000. Where like a young player, if they get a $500,000, or what's his name, Orlando Robinson, he got 500,000. So that's basically a quarter of the season because he makes 2 million bucks. So yeah, the more money you make, the longer you're in the league, the shorter amount of time that you're going to be able to stick around for that 750,000 guarantee.
You said you talked, or you guys talked to De'Aaron Fox about, the preseason and, and how they felt about it. Was that the consensus that they were just kind of looking around like, I don't know why you guys, while we're all like bugging, like, you guys can't make a three. What the hell is wrong with you? Like, they're like, why are you guys tripping? Was that the consensus with everybody you talked to?
Well, the other person we talked to was Doug McDermott, who literally had just walked in the door. Even that story is wild. We talked about that on Friday a little bit, but man, that was absolutely crazy. He agreed to a deal on Tuesday night. Wednesday morning, flew to Sacramento from Phoenix, where he took his physical, which took, like 4 or 5 hours, whatever it takes. Then he boarded a plane for LA, got to LA at 10 o'clock Wednesday night, made it to shoot around on Thursday, sat down with Jay Triano, sat down with Luke Laux to go over the offensive and defensive schemes, and then played 25 minutes. Like for a dude who hadn't like gone through a training camp or a return to play or a build up or anything else, like, hey man, you ready to go? Like, yeah, I'm good. So
I'm sorry,
yeah.
I had to chuckle at this. Ian Rappaport just tweeted, Coach Mike Shanahan confirms that Christian McCaffrey is unlikely to play this Sunday versus the Cowboys and says there's a better chance after next week's bye.
Yeah.
Coach Mike Shanahan.
Yeah, I was wondering if maybe you said, I didn't want to say nothing.
Coach Mike Shanahan confirms that Christian McCaffrey is unlikely to play Sunday versus the Cowboys.
I do that on occasion.
Yeah, a lot of the old timers do, James. That's all right.
I mean, if I'm him, I would go in and fix it in Twitter real quick. But yeah, that's funny.
I'm sure Ian did. I'm sure he fixed it. I think it's funny. I think well, it's probably someone. It was one of the big time broadcasts called Kyle Mike at some point this year already.
Yeah, it was probably Al.
Well, somebody keeps calling it the red area and not the red zone. I don't.
Who calls it that?
Jesus, Tom Brady.
Yeah, I was about to say, didn't Tom
Did Brady call it the red area?
He calls it the red area nonstop. It's like
maybe that's what they
weird.
call it. Maybe that's what they call it in the locker rooms.
I'm all for it though. It reminds me.
I think Tom's gotten a lot better, by the way.
Yeah,
I think.
Oh Tom,
yeah. Tom should not be judged on that week one performance. Like he has a much more of a personality, and I feel like he's gotten good. Red area, though.
I like that. It reminds me of Huey Brown, the painted area.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, but calling it the red area like 7 times a game, just like
it sounds crazy.
What are we doing here?
Like Tommy, they got creams for that. Like, what are we doing right here?
They have you can even give it a spray form, I think.
Go to the
Put some
doctor
talcum powder on there. a little gold bomb for that.
Gold bomb.
Hammer, how different do you think things are going to be for the Kings on Thursday? Based on what we've seen, how different do you think it'll be on Thursday?
I don't think we're going to see the same team that we've seen through the preseason. I think they're going to be just perfectly fine. And that's going to be a really, really good, highly contested game. At least that's what I'm sort of prepping for. You look at the first 10 games of the season, and they have every opportunity to get off to a great start. And if they don't, we're going to look at preseason and keep pointing back to it. But like if they just look like the team that came out 2 years ago, or even the team that, we saw for most of last season, like the good team we saw last season, not the one that, would lose the bad games, but I think they'll be perfectly fine, and I think they've got a really good chance to get off to a good start.
I agree. I think, and whatever, they come out and play well on Thursday. Not all their problems are gone. Like they still got issues that they need to work on throughout the season, whether they win or lose. But I think, like Ham just said, you're going to see a good, typical NBA basketball game from the Kings on Thursday.
Yep. Yeah, I'm ready for it.
Isn't Minnesota one of those teams that, not that the Kings like match up well in terms of size with anyone in the league, but isn't Minnesota one of the worst?
No, they went 2-1
Oh,
last
that's
season.
right. Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, I guess Julius isn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
Cat
don't know.
sets on the floor hitting threes is a big deal. Cat being down low or whatever with Rudy. Yeah, I guess I felt like that was always. They're really physical too. That was always a thing last year. And if Elston's still there, I'm sure he wants to kick the King's ass every time he comes around. So
Yeah. That's a very good team, and they've still got a ton of talent. They made a huge change, and when you make a move that size with Cat going out, that's like a cultural shift, and we have to see how that works out for them, especially early in the season. I think they'll be a much different team 35 games in, 40 games in than they are in the first 12 when the Kings play them 3 times.
Oh, the Lakers. Yeah, that's a good one, too. All right. I think we have to go. Jesse's making us end the show. We're going to head over to 1025, give away some tickets to Hip Hop Made the Bay. Tap in with us. Welcome Prize Picks. Big thanks to Map Training. And make sure you are locked back in here with us, beginning with James and Kyle, the Insiders, 10 a.m. here on Sacramento Sports Leader, ESPN 1320.